Why is God taboo? Today's theme is whether or not people should keep their religion to themselves. And to help us think about it, we have two eminent speakers with opposing views. Now, before we move on, would you kindly turn off your mobile phones if they're not already off? And I'd like to hand over to Simon Bibby, who will introduce the speakers and moderate the debate. Thank you, Simon.
Thanks, Ian. Well, thank you for coming. As you know, today's debate, the title of it is People Should Keep Their Religion to Themselves. And our debaters are David Auld, who is over there, right in the corner there, and Mike Anderson. David is an Anglican minister who grew up in England and currently works on the lower North Shore of Sydney Harbour. David is married to Jackie and they have 3 young kids. In his spare time, David likes messing around on the internet and he claims he pretends to keep fit. As you might expect from a Christian minister, he has the view that he is pretty bad at keeping the subject of God to himself, and he thinks God has been taboo for far too long. And you'll hear him in a moment. Mike Anderson is the director of the Neurocognitive Development Unit in the School of Psychology at UWA, and his research is concerned with the relationship between cognitive development, general intelligence and specific abilities. Mike claims to be an amateur in the matters of religion and philosophy, but is a keen follower and a casual participant of the debates until today. Now, just to outline the ground rules and how we're going to run this morning, this afternoon, we do have a tight time frame, so we won't be taking any questions from the floor. It is simply a debate between our two speakers. And so please, no interjections from the audience. We'll just go straight through and in the sequence that I'm about to outline. As Ian said, please turn off your mobiles. And what is going to happen is, first off, each speaker will be given 10 minutes to introduce their topic. Then they will be allowed 3 minutes to respond to each other in a rebuttal. Then what we're going to have is a short time of cross-examination. Raise 2 questions with each other and respond to those questions, and then they'll close their arguments. And as I said, I'll be moderating the debate, so I'll be calling on them to stop in due course. If they don't, I promise that I press a button and they'll disappear through the floor. So they're promising me they're going to keep to time. So we'll kick off the debate with Mike, who will open.
Thank you. I must admit, it's the first time I've ever seen myself described as an atheist on the leaflet. As we all know, there was this terrible storm in Perth yesterday, and the research unit that I work in was decimated with what looked like hailstones from hell, and I seriously thought maybe I should pull out, especially when my window caved in. And had I been sitting there, I would certainly be in the hospital today rather than before you. On the other hand, I could take that as a little tentative mark of approval that atheists should be allowed to join in these debates. Anyway, thanks for inviting me to come and talk to you today. And my task is to convince you of the affirmative of the proposition that people should keep religion to themselves, and I'm quietly confident that you're going to agree with me. I have to say, with this particular audience, it feels a little bit like Daniel walking into the lion's den, which also gives you a kind of example of the depth of my biblical scholarship. I truly am an amateur in these particular things. In fact, David was suggesting to me that perhaps we were being a little bit austere in our early changes and we should liven it up, and I thought, well, maybe the better metaphor and one that would appeal to you guys is I'm more like the early Christian here, thrown into the Colosseum, set to fight unarmed against the greatest gladiator in all his age, a graduate from the greatest gladiatorial academy in the country, the Sydney Diocese, whose mascot appears to be Cyclops. That is, why have 2 eyes when one will do? Sorry,
you'll keep
yeah. But there's definitely a feeling of Rome about today's debate. Both Dave and I have picked up on the Roman feeling, and I do feel a little bit like Brutus speaking to the crowd and about to be decimated by Mark Antony that follows on, but thankfully I will be at least given the chance to make a comeback. Why am I optimistic that you will come to agree with me that people should keep their religion to themselves? Why would people who believe in God ever accept that this is a good idea? And let me leave you with no doubt about why I think it is an idea that you shouldn't keep religion to yourself. It's mainly, in my view, through fear. Fear of disobeying a central commandment, and fear that people you care and love about will be eternally damned if you keep your religion to yourself. I think that's what motivates fundamentally the desire for religious people not to keep religion to yourself. So why on earth would I think I have a hope of convincing you that you're better to do that? Well, in the modern age, simply because, in my view, it's in your own self-interest to do so. My argument is an extremely simple one. The only kind of society that we've ever known in human history where there has been genuine freedom of worship are the liberal democracies that have evolved since the Enlightenment. And it is a condition of a liberal democracy that you keep your religion to yourself. Often this is called the separation of church and state. Now, you all bask in the security and comfort of such a society, and you might be tempted in some kind of complacency to think that such a tolerant society could only be improved if in fact there were more of a public role for religion. Well, I say to you, please resist the temptation. For any serious challenge to the separation of church and state, were it to break out, would lead either to a decrease in tolerance for religion, or we would be effectively saddled with a religious autocracy. Now, there may be some of you in this audience that would think a Christian theocracy would be a better way to run a society than the way we do it at the moment. The only trouble with that is there can only be one religion that runs an autocracy. And the problem would be, from your point of view, it would have to be a particular one, and frankly I don't fancy your chances, because probably it wouldn't be your one. Now, you could say, well, all very well and good, but what is this thing about liberal democracies insisting that we keep religion to yourself? Well, I should be clear about what I mean by that, because in some senses you most definitely do not keep your religion to yourself. And I, as a member of a liberal democracy, am quite reasonably happy to live with that. So let's see what I do not mean by keeping your religion to yourself. I do not mean that you should not be allowed to gather together to pursue communal worship. I do not mean that you should not be allowed to talk to your workmates about God, or hand them out leaflets inviting them to attend meetings like this. I don't even mean that you cannot declare a religious affiliation and still be a member of Parliament, or even government, or even a Prime Minister. And most importantly, I do not mean that you should not be free to believe in God if you want to. And this should be your most cherished freedom and the most desirable feature of a society that you should want to live in. In other words, you are free to believe in God and still participate as equally in society as someone like me who doesn't. This begs the question, really, what more could you possibly want? All that I ask in return is that you respect my right not to believe in God and agree to my right to live in a society where such a belief affords me the same political freedoms that you currently enjoy. So the sense in which I'm asking you to vote for the motion that you keep religion to yourself is actually a very specialised and indeed rarefied one. And one that I think it would be positively churlish, maybe even